Okay, so hopefully everyone can hear me, and welcome to the Grafana 101, your first dashboard session. And if you've never used one of these audio channels on Discord before, the center stage specifically, it acts a little like Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces, where you can basically raise your hand. There's a little icon in the bottom of the window, and you can raise your hand to be able to speak. There's also a chat window you can use. So in the upper right hand corner, you probably see like or actually there, or maybe on the channel list on the left, you'll see a little chat bubble. And then you can see the text chat where you'll see that Emma put a link to the knowledge base about dashboard basics. So hopefully this works out and you can see the chat. And while Emma's speaking, I'll try and watch the chat and Andrew as well. And and yeah, and ask questions at any time, and I'll give it over to Emma. And this is all being recorded, so it'll be on YouTube later.
All right, good morning. So today we're going to go over kind of we're going to start with the basics of the dashboard and then move into a little bit more advanced version. So let me switch over here. Okay, so first thing that we need to do is make sure that you have access to the dashboard. And to look at that, we'll go under our assistants menu in FileWave admin and hit manage administrators, and then you'll have your permissions listed here, and we just need to make sure that under dashboard you have access, and you can also configure if you're wanting to configure it. So that's the first thing that you want to do in order to see the dashboard. And then we're actually going to be using the web admin or FileWave Anywhere to set this up. So if you've never gone there before, just in a browser, you can browse to your server name. If you're already in FileWave Admin or FileWave Central, you can go to the File menu and hit Web Console, and it'll open it up there. Here. And then again, if you've never used it before, you just log in like you normally do. Maybe. There we go. All right. And then in Google Chrome, sometimes if you need to clear your cache, sometimes the dashboard doesn't show. Most of the time, you can just refresh and it'll pop up. At least it does in mine sometimes. And then from here, you can go to the dashboard. So right away, we already have a few dashboards set up. Most of their default one, unless changed, will look like this one. It's kind of like the web version of the one you already see inside FileWave Admin, where you can keep an eye on systems and what's going on. And Josh, if you want to say something about the smart groups one, because I know there's something that'll always show, or most likely always show warning
Yeah,
or red.
yeah. So the smart groups one is based on when devices enter or leave smart groups, that the number of devices involved in smart groups has changed. So that being that color is not necessarily a sign of something bad. Our training server has kind of stale data, I suppose, right? Because we don't. It's a lot of. It was data that we were given access to use for the training day, I believe, and so it's not really changing. But if you see yours as green or orange or yellow, I guess don't be too worried about that one. Um, in production, you may see it always green just because you always have smart groups changing.
And then if you want to see any other dashboards that we have set up, you can go up here to where it's showing the current dashboard that you're on. Just select that up there, and then it'll show you all the available ones. So most of these in this group, the FileWave group, unless you've added one, are all the default ones that you can see. So FileWave system is what we are on. You can set up alerts to be alerted by certain reports. And then boosters if you want to check your boosters. My server, I don't have any currently, so I don't really have any data there. But also you can change your default dashboard if you want to. So if maybe the FileWave system isn't what you want to be notified of right off the bat, whenever you come in, you can go in here to configuration, and then preference, I believe. And then your home dashboard you can change to whatever you want to. So if I instead wanted to be alerted or shown up by my associations that I have saved, I can do that as well. So now when I go in here to dashboard, it'll show up my associations, which I don't currently have set up. So that's where we're kind of going next. So some of the default things that we can do in the dashboard is expose your associations to keep an eye on them so you can see the progress of the associations. I already have one brought up here that I kind of set up. So like right now, I have it set up so I can see my booster pref, or I'm sorry, my super pref rollout for my boosters. So I can see how they're doing, how many have completed. Most of them are at 50%. And you'll see throughout this whole thing, I'm using a database that's actually not online, so none of my data actually changes. But so we can see what's going on with that association, if any have errored out, stuff like that. And to get these or to show your associations that you want, you'll need to go into your FileWave admin here. And then I would assume most of you are probably using associations right now and not deployments. So we'll kind of go off of that right now. So under your associations tab, you'll see a list of all your associations here. Get that out of the way. And then you can double click on your association and then expose to dashboard if you need to, which that's the right one. We'll do this one here. So I can hit expose to dashboard, hit OK, update the model. My model update takes a little while, so we'll move on from that. And then once that is finished, then it'll populate with the associations you have exposed to dashboard like I have here.
Maybe taking a step back, if I think about Grafana and like what I know I can show things, right? But like why would I care about Grafana and sort of making a dashboard?
Yeah, so I mean, you would create a
Like what we
dashboard
did the
with
other day.
or you
Like what
can
we did
create
the
a
other
dash.
day. Sorry.
Yeah. So you can create a dashboard to keep up with reports. So in this specific one, I'm keeping up with my associations. Oops, wrong one. Keeping up with the associations and seeing just the progress of what's going on. So I keep an eye on it. You can also use this dashboard and have it displayed on like a monitor and a TV or office. And this won't auto log out, so you can just keep it going. There is a playlist function if you wanted to right here. So if you wanted to create a playlist and you have a bunch of dashboards that you want to see, but you want them on a TV and you don't want to have to constantly like switch through them, you can create a playlist and just add dashboards to kind of sort through. Hit random ones here, and then the intervals, so how often you want them to switch. So some like 5 minutes is fine, others you want to see them, maybe it's they're like quick dashboards and you want to see them every 30 seconds like switched over. So then I hit save. Oops. So we'll just call this playlist. And then when you go in here, you can start the playlist and it'll ask you what kind of mode you want. We're just going to say normal for here, have an auto fit. And then so it'll just constantly, it'll go through all the screens. So this is set to every 30 seconds. So in 30 seconds, it'll move over. I'm just going to hit the next dashboard. So it'll go through. So you can kind of have it going through and displaying all the data you need. So just at a glance, you can see your information. So yeah, sum it up, what you'll use the dashboard for is just to get a review of what you want to see. So you can create these dashboards basically off of any report that you have. So you can see how many devices you have enrolled versus how many licenses you have. Or we can go even deeper and see like your software update compliance, which I have one here. So from this view, I can see how many licenses I have purchased, how many devices I have enrolled of each type, and then my number of devices that haven't connected in 30 days versus the percentage. So you can just see different data types, and then software updates, so percentage of non-compliant devices, which means devices that aren't up to date, and then also just the number.
And there was a question. Oh, sorry. There was a question about if dashboards and playlists are specific to the user account logged into FileWave or can there be dashboards playlists created that can be seen by any admin? I think didn't we find that that each user, well, that you could see the dashboards, but each user could have different preferences because in the lower left corner, I think it shows who you're
Yeah.
logged in as.
Yeah, so the playlist, I'm not sure about user. I don't see anything that you can make it just only available to the user. But these specific playlists, you actually like it's not something that you do by default. You actually have to go in here and start the playlist and have it going. So it doesn't show up until you come in here and click start playlist. Otherwise, it'll just default to the dashboard. Um, and then
See, like there, it knows we're in as FW admin, and FW admin has some preferences. But I think we found in practice, and Ryan commented yes, so I think that confirms it too, that you could see the dashboards, you could make your own playlist based on the dashboards that were created by somebody else. I think that was true.
So here under your name, so I'm FW admin, we have a preferences there, and then under here we have configuration. So configuration is site is everybody, and then your preferences under your name are just yours. So yeah, you can create your own home dashboard if you want to. Under configuration, you can do the same for everybody. So basically, unless it's not in your user preferences, if it's set to default dashboard, it'll default to what you have set site wide. Um, But as far as creating a dashboard that only you can see, I don't believe. At
It was
least I
probably,
have it.
and Sean, you could comment or you could ask to come on stage if it's more complex, but it's probably more the opposite. You know, wondering if as FW admin I create a dashboard, making sure that other users could see that dashboard if I wanted them to. Which I think the answer is yes. They'll see the dashboard. And he said thanks.
And then you can also set your theme preference as far as dark and light, which is nice, especially if you have it up on a giant TV. Um, okay, so back to our associations. So I added that association to be available or to show, and this is something that I'm running into. It could be my server specific, but like whenever I hit it, it kind of defaults to the default of no associations available. And then once I refresh it, it'll show up. But again, it could be my server doing it. I had it open. There we go. Which it could be again. I'm using a testing server, so it's I do a lot of testing on it, so it could just be something that I put in there. But normally, when you refresh, it'll come back up to this again. I haven't ran across that on an actual customer server yet, so that's why I think it's just me. But now, since I added this Beyond Trust association, now I can see it here along with the progress. So when you go in FileWave admin, when you expose that association to dashboard, just know you have to update the model in order for it to show up, and then you'll be able to see your deployment. And you can do this on any individual association that you have. I was going to see if there was another one too, like this one for all computers. So you might have a group of associations that are going to all your devices. Maybe it's like your base image association, and and you wanted to just keep an eye on that. So you want to keep an eye on all your deployment. Maybe you're going through like a big rollout and you just want to make sure that everybody's getting what they need. You can expose that to dashboard, throw that in a playlist, and just keep an eye on how your rollout is going.
And for the associations dashboard, that's built in, and all they'd have to do is expose it to dashboard and model update, and they would then see it.
Right. Yep. All they have to do is set that in admin, and your associations dashboard is pre-created under your FileWave folder there.
So that one seems pretty easy, and it would probably be pretty useful.
Yeah, definitely. And there are other things looking at each system. So we have like a Postgres one as well, so you can see the activity on that, number of errors, everything like that. Um, and let's move. So when you create a new dashboard, it automatically goes under general. You can create new folders if you want to, and you can also create those playlists based off those folders. But by default, everything goes under general unless you have selected otherwise. Let's go over here. Okay, so say you have a dashboard and you want to add something to it, or you want to create a new one altogether. So if you want to add a panel to an existing dashboard, you can go up here to add panel, or over here to dashboards, you can create a completely new one as well. So it'll give you a blank one, automatically add a panel for you. And then from here, we can hit add panel, and then we get our kind of query builder, panel builder. So we'll start with stuff that's already built in, and then we'll kind of go into like the default, creating it and aggregating data and counting and things like that. Add some fun little math in there. But for now, we're going to go to the FileWave tabular data source. So this is just a way to add queries that you've already created. So when I switch over there, I can select a metric, and just you can see all of my inventory queries that I've created. I'm trying to switch. I have to do that. There we go. So I can see all my inventory queries in there. And then I can select which one I want. So let's see, let's have a panel that just shows a number of all my devices, which I created. I think I named it devices, device count. There we go. So I select that. It will start to bring in the data, which you can see right here, starting to query. And I have quite a few devices in this database, so it takes a little bit longer than normal. And then as you can see, it automatically defaults to this time series over here. And that can sometimes cause problems, at least when I've been creating these, because in order to do a time series, you have to have a date and time format, which the majority of the time when I'm creating this, I don't. So I always like to just start off with a table, or I can switch this. You can switch any panel into a table view, and it'll show you what's there. Of course, it's not going to bring in anything. It would choose this moment to not work.
Yeah, our little training server, we should probably give it some more resources at some point.
I'm just kind of force it there. And I just switched it to table so it doesn't have to do that transform. Oh, did it cleared out my entry?
Although while you're trying to figure that out, which is probably just our poor little server, um, it reminds me that if you have more than one person who is setting things up in Grafana, there's an interesting problem that can occur. If you're making, changes to the dashboards and you haven't saved your changes, and another person is kind of going in and messing around, it can actually wipe out the changes that you've made if you haven't saved them. Emma and I did this to Emma like 3 times at the Heck conference, where she was making changes for the presentation, and then I just went into Grafana to take a look. And when I went there, it refreshed and it caused her unsafe changes to be lost. So you may want to be mindful of that if multiple people are working on Grafana dashboards at the same time. That's not normal viewing of dashboards. It's just if somebody's editing, then edits can get stepped on, and I think that's just the Grafana thing. So hopefully that gets better with newer versions.
I just think it was taking too long and it timed out because I
Yep.
can do the smaller ones. So we'll switch to all desktops. So right now I have it set to my table view. And The reason that this is more the like the basics one is because with this data we can't really do too much with it as far as like summing it up or counting or things like that. There are a few things that I found in the gauge visualization um, that works better. Correctly, why is it? Might be because it's trying to do a calculation of the last value. So I'm going to switch this to distinct count so we can just count how many we have in there. And then there's no numeric field, so I'm going to switch this over to let's do something unique, which would be like an ID, which looks like we don't have one in this query. So we will instead do device name. There we go. Looks like it was just the calculation because it was trying to do like a last null value, which there wasn't one. So it selected device name. So now it's just counting how many device names you have basically from this all desktops inventory query. I'm going to switch this over, see if it'll work now to all devices. As you can see, it's working right there.
And while it's doing that, I guess you have to think about, right, what kind of visualization you use based on the data that you're trying to show, right? So if you use a gauge if you want to see if something's above or below some amount, right? Like if it's a percentage based thing, you might use like a bar chart, I guess, to show Windows 11 versus Windows 10 versus Mac OS, whatever. Um, so it's just like in Excel when you're making charts, you know, if you think about the right chart for the data that you're going to use. And they all have these properties where you can kind of pick what it's looking at and how it's going to show it.
Stick to all desktops. Okay, so from here, yeah, so we have the gauge one here. So if you wanted, maybe you're keeping track of your licenses. So you want this gauge to see, you know, how many devices you have versus how many licenses you purchased. So like all desktops, that would go towards your client licenses. And then you can add a title here. So by default, it's just panel titles. So we can say enrolled clients. And for some reason, when you're adding things, you have to click out for them to actually be put in there. So just remember that after you type it, click somewhere else and it'll show up there. You can also change just different views of it. So I can have a transparent background if I just want it to blend in with the entire dashboard. I can add some links. So if I wanted to, I can add a link to this inventory query. So when I click on it, it'll take me to FileWave admin and give me that inventory query. So let me go back over here. We're doing all desktops. Go up to my reports. Yeah, I'm just going to search because there's a lot here. All right, and then I'm just going to grab the link, copy that, go back over here. And then I usually just keep it as show details, or you can actually do show report. And then I typically always do open a new tab so you're not, you know, going out of your dashboard, so you can still have that open. So now when we see it, we have this link here that we can show a report. All right. And then I kind of showed you the value options before, so it's just how you want to show your data in this specific case. And probably in a lot of cases that you're using this, you'll want to use distinct count where it just counts the field that you have selected. And then we have more information about like the how it's showing up here. Text size, we want it to be larger. Oh, here.
Or very tiny.
Yes.
Oh, and you have to click out, right? Yeah.
There we go. All right, and then if you wanted to do like a unit, so maybe if it wasn't just a straight up number and you needed like decimals or something like that, you can do that here, and it gives you a list of basically any type of unit you would want. And then, so if I wanted, I guess this is a bad example because it just wouldn't have any decimals, but if I wanted like, you know, just a certain amount of decimal points, you can add those too. Everything is auto by default, unless you put something in there. And then if you wanted to change these value or these colors, you can change this here. It's always set to classic palette, but you can always change it over here. So far, I haven't found, at least in these visualizations, because you can add and install more, you can't select like specific colors or like, you know, make it based on what you want. It's just you have what you have here. There we go. Okay, so we get down to the threshold. So kind of like what I was talking about earlier, if I wanted to see how many we have based on like the total amount of licenses. So I have 1,954 clients enrolled, and I have purchased 10,000. Sorry, I keep putting that in there. I purchased 10,000 licenses, as you can see on the bottom. I can't click it, but so what we would want to do is have my maximum 10,000, my minimum 0. So what I would want to do up here where we saw the max and min here. So this will be 0, max will be 10,000. And then I can make my threshold. So anything over 80 would be red, and anything under green would be, or under, or basically 0 to 80 would be green. Although it's not showing that here, that usually means that there is something wrong with the standard options up here, which I would guess is the unit. So I'm just going to make this a number. There we go.
There you go.
So yeah, if that unit isn't correct, which Ryan from Bib knows this all too well because we spent a while figuring this out. If the unit's not correct, most likely your gauge is going to be incorrect as well. So let's say I want to make sure that I always have at least 100 licenses available. And then it'll turn red if not. So then I will want this set to 9,000. And then I can also add different thresholds. So if I wanted like 9,900 to be like absolutely red warning, or red, I guess it'd be caution. And then I want a warning set. So it'd be like, oh, you're getting close to your 1,000 or your 100 licenses not being available. Then I could do also, just want to do something that makes it turn different colors. So let's do under that. So I'm going to do 1,800. There we go. So that'll show you that, so you can kind of make that, and then once you're finished with what you want, we can hit apply, and then that will go into your dashboard. Always make sure you hit the save button, otherwise you'll lose what you've done. And I've done that so many times. But always make sure you save after you've changed anything, or else the next time you refresh, it's going to go back to the last save state. Okay, so I want to go here, and then I'm just going to I was going to duplicate it, but there we go. Under more, I can duplicate it. So say I want the same data, but I want it to be shown in a different way. Kind of like I have with these software updates, I have the number as well as a percentage. So I can go here, I duplicated it, and then I can edit it and change something else. So maybe we don't want a gauge, and I just want a stat, which just gives me a number. So I can change it to look like that. There's really not a whole lot to change there except like the values, how it looks. I can have the yellow in the background instead of with the numbers. Here, like that if you wanted to, kind of like I have up here. Just kind of a bunch of different things that you can do to make it your own. With this specific type this FileWave tabular data source, the way it's set up, how I can't like do any like math as far as percentages and stuff goes. There's really not a ton of things that I would do as far as the visualizations part, because you're kind of just getting a single number, unless you wanted to do a table and actually see your inventory query in your dashboard. That's kind of, there's definitely limitations on what you can do with this specifically. So that brings me to our next point. So if you wanted to, and you have all these inventory queries, but you want to do more with it, maybe you want to count by a certain value, or you want to do like some math with it to get a percentage, like you want to see like the total number of devices. Maybe you want to see the percentage of your devices enrolled versus how many licenses you have and things like that. In order to do that, we need to use the FileWave Prometheus option or data source. So I'm going to go ahead and discard this one. We're going to delete this. So this is a little more in depth. You do need access to your FileWave server. If you have a hosted server, you can contact either us professional services or support, and we can help you with this step as well. But basically what you need is it's a YML file on your server that points to the specific inventory query that you want to use and how you want to aggregate that data. So from your FileWave server, I have mine right here. I want to go to user, and this is all in that KB. It's actually a little bit further in the dash. Actually, let me just bring it up for you. So if you want to look at this specific, what we're about to do, it's in the advanced dashboard primer and aggregating data. And that starts here with this group data using Prometheus. So we want to go to this location, which is where all of our YML or YAML files are located. So that's user, local, Etsy, FileWave, Prometheus, job, conf.d jobs, HTTPS. Oh, and I forgot to CD. Okay, so these are all the ones that I have created. By default, you'll only have one file, which is this README file in there. We do have templates of these files, and that is like one step above in this jobs. If I go one step above, I can see there's these two. These are the default ones. So if you go into one of those and view it, you'll see that all the lines are commented out. And so in order to create these, what I like to do is, because this is so specific on the layout, I like to just copy this into the other folder and then remove these pound signs, and then sorry, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Remove the pound signs. So I'm just going to copy my template over to HTTPS, and we will change the name. We will do, I don't know, does anybody have an example of what they want to see? Like any information from maybe their server that they'd be interested in seeing? If not, I'm just going to do software updates.
I'm looking at the chat. I don't see anything yet.
All right, I'll just do software updates. If you think of anything, definitely let me know, and we can do that as well, because I want to do something that you guys want to see.
Sean and Ryan might be writing something right now. Server health was what Sean said. Server health.
We already have one based on server health in the dashboard. It's one of the ones that we showed before in the default. So depending on what, I know you specifically want, like you can do Postgres health. So it kind of shows you what's going on there. So those are already made. This is kind of more of things that we can report in inventory queries, like things that have to do with clients or associations or applications installed, stuff like that. something that we can query. And obviously, you can do this with custom fields too, but just for the sake of time and everything, we'll want to do something built in already. So it's
Software
just
update
software.
is, yeah. But it does bring up a good point that in Grafana it can see things about the FileWave host, and you know things about FileWave data. So there's a variety of stuff you can do, and those built-in ones give you good examples, um,
Mhm.
because you can duplicate and edit those.
Yeah. So for the software update ones, I have already created them. But what I would do if I haven't is copy the one of the templates into this HTTPS folder, and then I would rename it. And what I've learned over the year that I've been doing this is when you make these files, it's so much easier to put the number of the inventory query that you're using in front of the I guess it's kind of a description of what you're making the YAML file for, because when you go back in maybe to troubleshoot what's not working, you can actually see which query it's actually pointing to without having to open it up. um, so step one of making or editing this YAML file would be to know what you're putting in it. So you'll have to know what inventory query you want to pull. So in your FileWave web admin or FileWave anywhere, you're going to look for the inventory query that you created, or you'll want to create one. So in this case, we're looking for software updates, that basically pending software updates that haven't, gone through. We want to see maybe the total amount of devices not compliant or not up to date. So I've already created one here. It's called software compliant or software update compliance. And I might as well just go into the edit and let it load from there. Okay, so for this specific one, I needed a way to bring in all of the devices. So what I did was just make sure the serial number is not null. So that means that we're only bringing in devices that have connected to FileWave to report the serial number, and then most likely reported its missing software updates as well. Um, and then also I just brought in the status of the software update does not equal installed. So from here, I should see all of the devices that have a software update that is not installed. Um, it looks a little different because when you're creating this, you're probably thinking that you would see a list of all the software updates, and you would, except in my columns here, I've unchecked those because I just want to see the amount of devices. So if I were to add in a software update field, roll down, then I would get a lot more results because I'm seeing every single software update. So each device could have 30 or so. So I'm going to see a lot more. I'm going to go ahead and unclick that because that's going to take a while to populate.
And I suppose another thing in production, like if we were a customer, you may want to also have in this query maybe that the device has talked to the server in the past 6 months or year, because folks may have devices that are in closets that are pending
Mm-hmm.
disposal that they don't want to see in the dashboard.
Yeah. Yeah, we could do so add another condition and we'll do last connected. And you say last connected
Like within the
after.
past or after a certain date. Yeah, if you knew the
Yeah.
school year ended
Or
and you got rid of stuff.
yeah, within the past is probably more dynamic because it'll move with you. So you could do within the past 6 months. So like 6 months from now, it's still just within the past 6 months.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna do. I think 6 months should be fine. This is an older server, so it might not have any. Oops. See.
You will
Yeah,
see if the data is stale enough that it's got no results. And you could remove that if it messes up your demo, but in reality, if this was a real server with clients checking in, there would be ones that would be showing up in the past 6 months. Oh no, there's some.
yeah. So yeah, again, we're just seeing devices, and I did not put a specific OS on here. So if you wanted to just see Windows, you could do that as well. But for this one, I'm just saying all my devices because in my environment, I want to make sure everything is up to date. Um, So I'll put that in here. One thing that you need to make sure you do is have a column in here that is unique. So something that won't, couldn't be copied. So that could either be serial number, or what I always like to use is device ID, because it'll never, the FileWave server won't let you have a duplicate on that. So I always make sure device ID is in there, and then whatever you want to count by. So what I normally do is, it depends on what I want to aggregate, but I continue to use the device ID field, or I do serial number as well. So if you wanted to count how many devices that you have in this list, you want to do a unique one. If instead you wanted to count like how many iOS devices are in this list versus how many Windows devices are in this list, then you could do OS name, or I guess OS type would probably be better, and then it'll count by those fields instead. So you just want to keep a note, make sure that those are in here, because your query needs something to like pull the data from. So device ID I'm going to have in here, and serial number, just to make sure that I have something. So I'm going to save that once I have it created. And then up here, oh, it backed out of it. Where did it go? There it is. So up here, I can see in the URL my report ID. So this report is my inventory query, or report 300. When I create another one, the numbers will continue to go up. So that's how we're going to reference this specific inventory query. So I know that's 300. So I'm going to go back to my server, to the YML file that I created, which I put 300 in the name just so I know exactly what query it's pointing to. So if I look at that, you can see it's the same. Oh, I forgot to go back into it. That helps. There we go. Okay, so now if I look at that, it's the same template that we had before. I just removed, so all the lines aren't commented out. And I was very careful not to change anything else, because the format and everything does matter. And then the only thing that I'm changing is basically from here on. So I'm changing this number, so it's looking at my 300 report, which is a software update compliance one. And then I have my data. So one of these is, and I always forget, I always get it messed up, so I'm going to double check before I tell you the wrong one. Oh, forget which picture it is, that format. We need to fix that format. There we go. So you see it here. There we go. So the last one that you have listed is account by client. So this is the number there, or the value that you want to count by. And then this is the one you want to aggregate or group by. So if you look in FileWave admin, you can see that I don't really have what it was showing in that list. I just see the basically pretty name of it, but I need what the database pulls from it. So what you can do, or what I like to do, so what you can do is use the API to pull in that, and it'll kind of show you what it's bringing it by. But what I like to do is, in the admin, you can go to your server address. Oops, you type it right. And then you go /API/doc. And this will show you.
Take off the S.
Oh, I always do that. Thank you. API doc. And then this will eventually show you all of the API commands available. And then you're already logged into admin, so it's already logged in, and you don't have to basically use the long command in your terminal to pull the API. This is kind of doing half the work for you. So that's why I like to do it this way. And then I can report or filter by reports. And then I want to get a specific report by a specific ID, which will be my 300. So I can hit try it out, throw my 300 in there, hit execute, and then it's going to give me my inventory query. And from here, I can see the columns that I added. So I can see the component and the column, which is what I need. So if I'm going to aggregate by the serial number, then I know what I need is client.serial_number. So on for everything else. So if I was going to do last check-in, client.last_check-in. So that's how that goes. And now you can find like the internal name. I guess in my opinion, it's the easiest way to do it. So once you have all of that, you can put that in here. So I'm going to count by the device ID. So how many device IDs show up in the report, and then I'm going to group by, and technically in this specific query, I'm not really grouping too much because I just want to count by serial number. So I could even do device ID in this one as well, and it would be fine. I just wanted to make sure that each count, each device has an individual count and doesn't get grouped up in any way. So I know serial number, they're not going to be duplicated. So it's only going to count exactly how many devices I have in there. So once that is done, I just save my changes. Oh, I didn't change anything. So there we go. So once that is in there, I can see it. Sorry, wrong one. I can see it in there. And then eventually inside your dashboard, oh, got it filtered. There we go. Inside your dashboard, if we add a new panel and we set this up for FileWave Prometheus, we'll have a list of metrics. So these are all of the YAML files that I have added. So you'll want to look for your specific query, which is why it's important to put your name or put the query number in the name so it's easy to go back to when you inevitably forget. Um, and then, so if you're looking at this for a while, it does take a minute for it to actually show up after you've created that file. I would say wait at least a minute for it to show up, and you can also just search by your number. If you're doing this and it just never shows up, there is a way to test that your YML file is correct and is being acknowledged by the FileWave server. And that is in 312 testing the Prometheus scrape. So basically all you need to do is you need to create a tunnel to your FileWave server, an SSH tunnel to your FileWave server, and then because it's not open by default, and then go to this 8,000 port targets. So in my FileWave server, and it's a little different because I have a key that goes to. So I'm going to put in that command. Right now I've created the tunnel, and then if I select this, it thinks that that localhost is the server, and this will show up eventually.
Looks like it's still loading. It's still swirling up in the tab.
Yeah, it's usually pretty quick when you're not on my server. I'm connected through VPN as well for the server, so it's even longer. And I know all this sounds like a lot, but basically when you get the hang of it, when you're doing this, you don't have to test the Prometheus scrape each time to make sure it's working. And also when you create those YML files, you can use them for more than one panel. So now that I have that YML file that brings in the report that shows me the software update compliant, non-compliant computers technically, now I don't have to create that, and I can make multiple panels off of that one. So you really only needed to do it for each query that you create, and then you can make multiple panels and dashboards from the one. Okay, so now I see here what we're looking for is this extra config, so we can see all of my files that I've made, and you can kind of see which ones that we're looking at by the number. So there's 297, query 307, we're looking for 300. There it is. It says it's up, so it should be good to go. If you ever see down, that means, well, if you ever see down after it's been created for about 5 minutes, because sometimes it goes to down once it's still running it, then typically what that normally will mean is that there's something wrong with the format, or the some of the data that you chose to aggregate or count by is not in the FileWave query. Maybe you forgot to add that as a column, things like that. If you ever see unknown, usually it's just waiting. It's taking an extra long time to actually find it. But now I can see that it's all up. You can also, in this view, if you just wanted to see things that are unhealthy, you can click that too, and it'll show you. And then, so once we see that everything's healthy and we can see it, we can go back to our dashboard. we can find the one we're looking for. So this one's 300, so I'm just going to find it this way. We'll bring that in, and then I can hit run query just to make sure we've got what we need. Again, it automatically defaults to this time series, which is, I don't have any data or date and time data in here, so it's probably going to come back with an error. So I'm just going to switch it for now to table so I can just make sure that everything's brought in okay. You can automatically default to whatever you want to, but I like to do the table just to make sure that any errors that I might get afterwards are from just basic formatting and not from actually trying to pull that inventory query. Which I already got an error. And today is not my day.
Maybe it timed out just
It will
because the
time out after
performance of the
30
server. Oh,
seconds, but
just because
it
the performance of
shouldn't.
the server wasn't so great.
Yeah, it shouldn't because I mean I already have these set up here. So like if this is what I was going to create right now. Let it load. Sorry guys. So this all 20 minutes before and everything was working.
We probably just need to throw some more CPU at the lab server. It has way more data than it originally did.
Okay, let me see. Because I did this just in case it did happen. I created two different files for the data. Let me see if I created one for this one too.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that's
Sean.
true, Sean.
Thank you. Make me feel better. Okay, so this was happening yesterday too, and it just wouldn't load. And what I ended up doing, and it kind of just made it work, was I went into my inventory queries and the one that I made, and then basically I just duplicated it. And actually, just for the sake of my server, I'm gonna make this. I just want to make my data a little bit smaller. Pretty sure I pulled this back in November.
Yeah, there's still 18,000 records.
I do one more thing to make it smaller. I'm only gonna devices just get this moving a little faster. So I'm gonna bring in OS type is Windows. Watch it go to 0.
And if anybody has to drop before we get to the very end, this will all be recorded and hit YouTube, so we'll get to you'll get to catch any bits you miss because I underestimated the amount of time it would take. I usually do that most of the sessions. I should plan for double the time.
Yeah, and we also do the open office hours. So after this, if you go in and do your own dashboard and have any issues, we can also talk and go over any issues you might have during those as well. Do you know when our next one is? Is that next week?
I think it might be. Let me look.
Okay, 6th and
But
7th.
either way, we also hang out on Discord, so you can always ask in the Grafana channel.
Okay, so I created this copy, and hopefully it'll work a little bit better. So I guess you'll be able to see the whole process now. So I'm just going to copy what I already have. So I'm just going to copy my software compliance one. I need to know the number of my report. So I'm going to go back in here, go to my reports, find the copy that I made, which I believe is this one. If we bring this out a little bit. Yes. Okay, so we are looking at 309. Go back in here, and I'm going to name this 309 software Windows. IM. Whoops. Oh, I'm not sudo. My bad. Do that again. All right, and then I need to go in there and change the number of the query. So I'm going to edit 309. And I'm still using the same data, serial number, and client device ID. So all I really need to do is just change this number to 309. So it's looking at the right one. All right, and then you'll get to see this whole thing now. See, it was for a good reason. So now I'm gonna just review this, and then I should see it go from probably unknown to healthy again. By the time it's done loading, it'll probably be okay. It's okay already. I would assume we'll double check 309. There it is, and it's up. Okay, so back to I forgot I had to add that panel yet. I didn't save it. See, that's what happens when you don't save a panel. You lose it. All right, so we're going to go back here, select the metric. So this is 309, so that's just what I'm going to search for. And then switch it to table view so we get a little easier to run the first time. There we go. Much better. Okay, so now we're seeing the total number of devices that are non-compliant. So for this one, I'm just going to do a number. So I want to see the number of devices. So I can, if I want to, instead of just seeing the table, I just want to see like the count, or right here it's saying hint add sum, which is something that you can do. But what I like to do specifically, just because I'm used to seeing it this way, is I like to switch this over to code. Just in my brain, I guess it's easier for me to just see it this way instead of having to click a bunch of buttons. But you can also do it in the builder as well. You can see it just adds count here, and you can just select different labels instead of just typing it in like I did. Um, So right now we're just counting how many devices are in this inventory query. Now I still have it set as a table view, so we're just seeing the count on the only time field that it can find basically. So it's just kind of like taking and guessing what you want to see, which is not right in this view, but eventually we'll get it right. So we want to switch this because I just want to see a number or a statistic. I'm going to do the stat one here, turn off table view. So now I see my number. I can do everything that I did with the gauge as far as like adding different thresholds and things like that. I want to make sure that this is always set to count or distinct. Sorry, I already called myself distinct count. Oh, oh, it's because I already did the count in here. I don't need to actually. So we'll do all unique values. So I guess that's kind of an extra thing that you don't really need to do. I guess I'm just stuck in my ways and I do the count this way. So I suppose if you did it just a normal inventory query, bringing it in and then did the count. There it is. I'm not sure. I think it's doing, oh, numeric fields. That's why. Let's just count. Yeah, maybe this is why we don't do it this way. So it's just showing the names of them that way. Yeah, let's just do all values and then we'll do the count again. That is much easier. Same result half the time. Now what did I change? There we go, that's the default. Okay. And then you can change the color mode again. You can see how many, so this is non-compliant computers. So I can change it to the background and then also we'll want to do, we don't necessarily need a minimum or max because we don't have a minimum or max of how many computers are non-compliant. We kind of just want a threshold here. So say you don't want more than 4,000 devices out of compliance. But anything over 2,000 devices you're worried about. And then anything under 2,000 is fine. So you can add those thresholds there. You can also change the numbers if you want, or the colors if you want to. We've got some colors there. If you hate purple, you can do bad as purple or something like that. And then do that there. And then we have our numbers. So we'll want to save, always save, and apply. We can see this here, and we can also move these around however we want. We can make them bigger and smaller. Maybe if it lets me. There we go. Do it there. Oh, I forgot to add a title. We're going to edit that. So non-compliant. Caps lock. Non-compliant window. Save. So now I have that there. And then maybe I also, like I have in this other dashboard, I want to see what percentage that is. And that's where the fun bit of math comes in. So we'll add a new panel like we did before. And then in our new query, what we want to do is how do we get a percentage? We divide the total number of devices by the number that we want to get the percentage of, which is non-compliant devices. So I'll first want to make sure that I have an inventory query that also gets all of my devices or all of my Windows devices, which I do not have right now because actually I don't have a, I do right there. So you'll want to create a new YAML file for all devices, which I already have here. So all my Windows devices, and I just want to double check that that's still a good one. So we're looking at 295. So in here, I'm just gonna go 295. Just make sure that everything's still there and good and the correct columns are still here. So I just want to check serial number and I want to check device ID, which look good. Okay. So we have that here. So it's 295 Windows devices. So we can go back to our panel that we created. Like I said, we want to do a little bit of math, and that's easier to do in the code version, at least again for me. So I want to do the number of Windows devices. I'm sorry, the number of non-compliant Windows devices divided by the total number of devices, Windows devices. So what I need to start with is making a sum, or you can do count as well. It'll get you the same thing in this case. And then we're going to put in our query, which if you're typing in this way and not searching, it's just FileWave inventory query. And then this one will be 309. Perfect. And then I'm going to do divided by / the count of my inventory query that has all of my devices, Windows devices, which was, I believe, 295, but I'm double check. Yes, okay. All right, so I feel like I always get the format wrong as far as the parentheses, but I think everything's good there. And then again, this is going to be just a percentage value. So what I could do is I could do a pie chart to see the percentage that way. I could do a gauge, stuff like that. So in this one, let's do, actually for this specific one, I think a gauge will probably be best because you can actually see how this all works out. So right now I'm getting a percentage like this. So 0.971. So I believe it should be 97%. Let's just check our numbers, make sure that that sounds about right. So out of about 7,000 computers, we have I believe this one was about 7,000. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so that sounds right. So 97%, but I want to actually see like a percentage. So what I can do in here is if I go down to my units, there it is, and I just look for percent, and I can do different ones. So I can do the dot point ones and the 0 to 100. In this case, because it was 0.97, we want to make sure it's from 0 to 1, and that changes over to 97.1%. If I wanted to do more decimals in there, I could add more. If I wanted to see, a big old number, I could do that too. Or if I just wanted to see the top 97%, I could do that as well. And then from there, down here on the thresholds, I want to make sure this is switched to percent. And then anything above 80% is bad, but we're going to do anything above 40% is bad. But you can tell that it's still 97% is still green. So that means something's wrong here. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it's because we don't have a minimum and max set. So I always forget which one. Minimum is always going to be 0, but max, I can't remember if it's
It
100
was
or
one, isn't
120.
it? Wasn't it like
You're right.
one? Yeah, and now it shows. That was our problem with how
Yeah.
100% is really as you approach one.
Yeah. And it makes sense because you have this selected here, so 0 and 1, and you think by auto it would automatically do that, but it doesn't. So if you ever see that and your gauge doesn't match up with the actual numbers on the screen, it's because you need to adjust your minimum and max. All right, and then we can add our panel title. So percentage of non-compliant Windows devices. And that's a very long title, so I'm just gonna put the symbol there. All right, and then I can make it as pretty as I want and do a bunch of things there. We're gonna hit save. and apply. If you hit apply first, you can always hit save up here. And then we have that here. So then we can put our non-compliant windows number next to our percentage and so on. All right. And I don't want to go overtime. I mean, go more overtime.
Ah,
So
we're
is there,
we're a little over, but I think maybe just to recap a couple of things was the YML files are needed if you want to show your own queries, like the data from your queries to use them. The
Mhm,
naming them using the query number in the name is a good idea as a best practice to not be confused.
mhm,
Um, Using the slash API slash DOC URL to look up, what the components are to know what to put in those. Um, and that every time you make a new panel to show data, that time-based series is not like a great starting point because it's probably almost never what you want. You probably want
right.
gauges, and you probably want to show numbers and bar charts and pie charts um, and when doing a gauge based on a percentage, thinking about how it approaches one, right? Because that's 100%. Um, I don't know. I just wanted to kind of recap those things that I picked up as you were speaking, and uh,
Yeah.
and then maybe if people have questions, we could.
Yeah, and just to recap the whole or the table thing again, I always, whenever I'm just bringing in the query just to make sure that it's getting the data that I want it, I always just switch it to table view so I know I'm getting it, and then any other issues I might have loading the data are from the settings in here and not necessarily the actual report.
So if anyone did have questions, you could ask in the chat, or you could hit the little raise hand button on the bottom of the screen, and if you want to be able to speak, if that's easier. Either way.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to help out anybody with their dashboard. If you have any questions, or if you have professional services time and you want to give me a list of what you want, I can make them for you too. Um, yeah, happy to do it.
And this will probably hit YouTube in probably next week because I'll give it to Nina to upload
Mhm.
today, and it usually takes a day or two to do.
Yeah, and I would even say like if you guys have a like something more, because we only really scratch the surface here of what we all we can do. If you have specific examples that you want to see, or specific charts that you want to see, you can always like send us a list and we can have another one of these Grafana sessions kind of picking up from where we left off.
Yeah, yeah, and GrafanaCon is coming soon, I think. So
Oh yeah, I wanted to
uh,
mention that do they Grafana is coming up, but they also do webinars like like at least once a month. And I just got an email on their last one, if I can find it. Sorry, I have
what
everything minimized.
it's
I can't
okay.
see
While
anything
you're
anymore.
looking, at, just so everybody knows, Grafana is obviously it's a product of sorts, right? That's is a product that's built by an organization, and they have all sorts of educational materials about it. They have a conference every year, and it's virtual, so you can watch it. And I believe it was all free access to the videos and such for the conference, and so you can get pretty deep into Grafana. It's not just a FileWave thing. Grafana is useful for tracking information about a lot of things. There's all sorts of ways you might use it for more than just FileWave.
Yeah, their next one is March 30th, which I can bring this over here.
Yeah,
But
and
they have
maybe
quite often.
copy. Oh, I can paste that into the chat. Unless you have access to the chat window.
I think if I go there, yep, I do.
Oh yeah, it says you're typing.
Oh,
So
that's
just because we can be resources about Grafana as it relates to FileWave, but there's so much more. Grafana has just a lot to it that you can do. There you go.
Yeah, they have a lot of stuff here. Oh, thought maybe that would work. But yeah, they have a lot of stuff at the website too. Their help documents are really great. I use them daily. But yeah, so they're pretty awesome. And just the amount of stuff. Like, I mean, today you saw less than 1% of what they can do.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you guys experiment, you know, you can't, I'll say there's probably nothing you could break. If you make a new dashboard and you add panels and you have a YML file that's checking a query for data,
Oh,
or,
yeah.
you know, there's nothing harmful you could do really. So
Yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
try to set something up that shows what you want to show.
All right. Well, if no one else has any questions, again, feel free to email me, ping me here in Discord, whatever, if you need any help or run into any issues. Uh, and yeah, have a good day.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Emma. And I will stop recording now.